Hi, this is Lance Edwards.
And this is Randy Lupke.
And welcome to this edition of Financial Independence, A Better Perspective. And, Randy, we've got a topic today that I've found in my experience. First of all, it's very powerful within real estate with tax avoidance. And very few people really understand the power of it. And that is 1031 exchanges and some alternatives of 1031 exchanges. So I want to talk about that today, is 1031 exchanges. And I know you talk about this a lot. So I'm going to start the conversation with a question to you. Or I guess, first of all, can you explain for everybody in simplest terms, what is a 1031 exchange?
Absolutely. Yeah. Real estate is an amazing investment because there's so many benefits, of course, that the tax code is written into owning income property. And certainly 1031 exchange is one of those. So 1031 exchange, first of all, has been around for decades. I think the family, if I recall, that started it was called the Starker family. And my recollection was they owned a mine or something, and they were going to sell it, and they sued the IRS to not have to pay the capital gains tax on that sale if they moved the money from the sale into another like kind property. And that's basically the essence of a 1031 exchange. You're going to make a sale of one appreciated asset. You're going to move all those gains from that appreciated asset into the new property, and that's the basics of it. Does that make sense, Lance? Do you understand that part? Sure.
Yeah. That's and first of all, I didn't understand the history of it. That's kind of a fascinating part. Some family brought this benefit. Well, thank you to the Starkers. So make
thank you, Starkers.
All right. So I know there's some. So basically, you sell a piece of real estate, you got a capital gain. As long as you reinvest it in another piece of real estate, you pay no capital gains. So what are some of the rules with this? Talk about the time frame, how long you have to do this? Do you do it yourself? The involvement of intermediaries. Can you talk about some of those rules?
Absolutely, yeah. And while we're on this, and before we move into the rules, prior to the tax code change last year, the 1031 exchange was available for a lot of other highly appreciated assets besides real estate. You could do it with your car. So if you had a car, you had it in your business, you depreciated or expensed that car, and then you sold it, and then bought another car, you could 1031 exchange those gains as well. But that's now put on hold. And I say put on hold because it wasn't a permanent part of the tax code, but at this juncture, they took away all the 1031 exchanges in the code except for real estate. Right, so that let's just call that rule number one. It only works for real estate, right? For rental property. Okay. All right.
Excellent.
Yeah. So
now, I guess the reason that is because so many congressmen own real estate. I suppose why that part stayed in is my guess.
Or we have a president that happens to be a real estate president. How about that?
And that too.
Yeah. No, it's a big deal because, again, you get to roll these gains forward and forward and forward, and under current tax law, you can do that in your entire life. And then when you die, the property is going to step up in basis, and those properties then pass down to your heirs, income tax or capital gains tax free, right? So it's a huge loophole, if you will, built into this 1031.
Let's talk. That's a big part. A lot of people don't think appreciate that. There's no limitation how many times you can do this. You can basically, I think of it in terms of keep trading up.
Yep.
Take the capital gain appreciation you got off property A. Now you got a bigger chunk of cash. Uses a bigger down payment on B. Do forced appreciation, same thing. Sell that, roll that, and just do the math. Which I've done the math. It's 3 to 4 moves. You're getting a 7-figure net worth pretty easy from a very, very modest start. And then when you die, not that you're too worried about this, when you die, your heirs, you pass it on to them. They pay no tax either because, as you say, Randy, the basis just got reset. It steps up, so they start all over, and they start 1031 exchange from that.
That's right, and not only does the basis step up for tax purposes, but the basis steps up for depreciation purposes as well. So it's just amazing how this law affects real estate and the transfer of wealth from generation to generation. So let's start drilling down on some of the rules, right, of the exchange. The first one is pretty simple, that if you sell the property, you can't touch those proceeds, right? So if I touch those proceeds, it's called constructive receipt, then I'm going to owe the taxes on them. So to avoid that, we use what's called a QI, or a qualified intermediary. Have you ever had an opportunity to work with one of those before?
No, I am going to have one here soon, though. So if you've got some experience with it, I'd love to hear about it.
Yeah, so qualified intermediary is basically just a third party that's going to hold the funds. So if you sell a property, say you sell an apartment for $1 million, instead of that escrow check going to you at the close of escrow, it's going to be held, it's going to go be transferred over to the qualified intermediary, and they're going to hold those funds until you find your exchange property. That's their whole purpose in life, is to be the exchanger of those funds. Okay. Now, couple caveats around that, because if you think about it, you sold your property, the cash is going to this third-party company or person. You have no liens against this person. You can't, right? You have nothing that you can do to secure those funds. So, one of the first caveats would be to be certain that you're dealing with a qualified intermediary that you can trust. They're going to have your money.
That's an interesting point. Okay, let me ask a question about this. Are they licensed?
I don't think so. That's a great question, and I don't know the actual answer. Maybe we can do a follow-up on that, but I don't think they have to be licensed per se. A lot of these companies, yeah, I think a lot of these companies, it's just state. It's going to be state by state. We know that. It's not a federal thing. I think a lot of these companies are just individuals. Sometimes they're escrow companies that will create a division, separate division within their company to hold the funds, but I don't believe it requires licensing. And by the way, I have heard, and this not just heard like rumor, I know this to be a fact, that a qualified intermediary has run off with the client's funds. It does happen, right? And there's nothing you can do about them. It's not even stealing, because the money doesn't belong to you. It belongs to the qualified intermediary.
That's very interesting. Okay, important safety tip. Yeah, check out your QI, your qualified intermediary, who you're placing your money with. Okay, thank you, Andy.
Yeah, and fortunately, because these things have been around for decades now, there's certainly a number of companies that have been doing them for decades, have great reputations, understand the process, and as a result, they're pretty safe to work with. I'm just warning you here that that money's not yours. It goes to this third party, so be sure you know who that third party is that you're dealing with, and that you can trust them. I think that's a big caveat.
It's a big one. All right, very good. Excellent. That's excellent. Yeah, I didn't realize that. Excellent.
All right, so then we mentioned that you have to identify an upleg, the property you're going to exchange into. So you have 45 days to make that identification, and there's some rules, some detailed rules around that, which I won't get into. But you can't just name 500 properties as potential properties and then close on one of them. There's restrictions on the actual number of properties that you can identify as your upleg, and on the value of those properties as well. So that's another restriction. 45 days, the number of properties and the value of the properties are also limitations.
Let's talk about that, because let's say I'm an apartment guy. You're selling an apartment building. You're not limited to exchanging into an apartment. It could be any type of real estate, correct?
That's a good point. Yeah. So you have $1 million in our example, and you don't have to buy, and we sold an apartment, right? So you don't have to buy another apartment to perfect the exchange. You could buy a single-family residence, or you could buy multiple single-family residences, or you could buy apartments and single-family residences. You can buy, again, any like-kind property, which is pretty broad, right? It's a pretty broad description, and you can do that in a combination. And if you don't fulfill 100% of the exchange, that's fine too. You're just going to pay tax on that piece that you didn't fulfill. We'll talk about that in a minute. We'll talk about boot.
Okay, well, hold that thought on boot. The experience I've had with on 1031 exchanges is I've sold property to somebody who was 1031 exchanging. It was the same process. I actually submitted them. He had a fixed amount of money, and I gave him multiple properties that I was selling that were smaller properties, and he put it on his list of candidates. And then he didn't. I don't think he bought all of them, but he bought a major portion of them. He took one lump of money and put it into smaller real estate projects. And classic example of what we're talking about right here. So you can go larger, you can go smaller, you can go different type of real estate in the 1031 exchange. All right, I do want to talk about. Well, you brought it up. Go ahead and talk about boot, and then we're going to talk about some alternatives.
Okay.
1031 exchanges. This is really super.
And before we get into the boot, then let's put one more date on the table. So we know we got 45 days to find an upleg, to find a property to exchange into, but we also have 180 days to close the escrow. So typically that's 6 months, right? And that's from the close of the first escrow to the close of the exchange escrow. You have a half a year. That's pretty easy to satisfy. But the tricky part is, of course, finding this upleg in 45 days, right? That's the hardest part. And a little twist on that, you can do what's called a reverse exchange to take some of the pressure off. And basically what that means is you actually find and acquire the upleg property prior to the sale of the exchange property, and then you can exchange the sale property into the property already acquired. So you could do a reverse exchange or traditional exchange, but it's 45 days and 180 days. Those are the two important dates.
All right, so so as far as what I'll call the traditional 1031 exchange, is on the so with this 45 days is basically just for 6 weeks, not a lot of time. So I think it's what's really, if you're going to sell one piece of real estate, you need to start looking for the next one. Ideally, have it, before you close on the first one. I don't think you want to sell your apartment building and say, okay, now let me start looking for something else to buy. Yeah. Do your get your wish list ready to go, and you got to coordinate, because really at 45 days is a pretty short window.
Yeah, and depending on the market, it could be impossible, right? So in 2008, 9, 10, it was easy to find properties to buy, but right now it's very difficult.
Yeah, although I think it's getting ready to shift, but we'll save that for another podcast.
Another podcast, sure.
Yeah, COVID recession. So, all right, so that's how you do it. So you got to, with a regular IRA, or not, it's just an IRA. I mean, a 1031 exchange. You got to coordinate these timelines. So let's talk about now this alternative that you're open the door to, the alternative approach.
Well, let's go back to boot, because we didn't finish boot or anything. Start boot. So let's talk about boot. What does that mean? So boot is basically a profit in either the equity in the property or the loan. Okay. So let's use our $1 million property again, and let's just say it has a $500,000 mortgage on it as well. So I have $500,000 of equity, $500,000 mortgage, and to not pay any taxable gain, I have to buy a property of equal or greater value. So I'm going to buy a property or properties of $1 million or more, but I also have to have at least $500,000 of debt on those properties. And if I have either one of those, if I don't satisfy them, let's say I bought $900,000 of property, I'd have $100,000 of boot. Or if I bought $1 million of property and I didn't put any mortgages on it, I'd have $500,000 of boot. So I got to cover the mortgage and the equity.
Say that again. I'm sorry. Repeat that again. Let's make sure that's totally clear to everyone. This is an important point.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So to not pay any taxes, I have to satisfy two tests. I have to make sure that I have a property that's of equal or greater value that I've acquired, and I have to have equal or greater debt on the new acquisition as well. So again, using our example, $1 million property, this time I put a $500,000 mortgage on it. And if I bought a property for, say, $1,100,000 and I put a $600,000 mortgage on that new purchase, no boot, no tax, good to go. On the other hand, if I bought a, say, $900,000 property and I put a $500,000 mortgage, well, the $900,000 doesn't cover the $1 million, so I have $100,000 of boot, and that would be taxed. I got to satisfy the equity and the debt.
So I got to ask a question. Do you have any idea why the debt portion is included in the determination of what's going to be tax-free?
Yeah, and this is we'll not go too far down this route trail, but basically, you know, it's cash out to the buyer. I mean, the seller, right? And so then, you know, they're going to look at it as a tax over basis, and cash over basis, and is it taxable? So again, what we just to keep this conversation simple, to satisfy the 1031, we got 45 days and 180 days. 45 days to identify, 180 days to close. We have to have debt equal to or greater than what we started with, and we have to have property value equal to or greater than what we started with, and you can do it with multiple properties. So that's the framework of what we're talking about.
Fair enough. Fair enough. All right.
Okay.
So now that's 1031 exchange. Alternatives.
Yeah.
Alternative 1031 exchange. Work around some of these.
Okay, so we already discussed what we love about the 1031 exchange. It's been around for decades, and frankly, even though there are some rules, it's relatively speaking fairly simple to execute, and as a result, it's also very affordable. This qualified intermediary is only going to charge you a few $100s to serve that position, and so for a few $100 you can potentially defer paying tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars of taxes. But the challenge with the 1031, the biggest one, and this is really evident right now, is you're selling highly appreciated properties into a highly appreciated market, which means what, Lance? I mean, what does that mean to you? You have to do with that money? What?
Well, first of all, you're going to be. I wouldn't want to do it because you're probably paying for overpriced property. That'd be my biggest concern. And
exactly, yeah.
I'm doing bad deals just to save some taxes.
Just to save some taxes. So you end up selling at a high value, and then you may find out that you end up buying at a high value as well. So why would you want to do that? Well, there's a lot of reasons. I mean, there may be something that you see that in this up-leg property that has a lot of potential, and there's reason to move the money. But the biggest problem again people have is they look at it, if I'm just moving money from pocket A to pocket B, and maybe I'll make some my realtors will make some commissions, but am I really gaining anything by doing this exchange? So wouldn't it be sweet, or wouldn't it be ideal, frankly, if there were a way to sell that property, put that money somewhere on the sidelines, and not have to do this 45-day identification, 180-day identification, maybe even take years before I reinvest in a property? Would that be a good alternative to discuss?
I think you got everybody's attention. You got mine, Randy. Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
All right, excellent. So this is called a deferred sales trust, and unlike the 1031 that's simple and inexpensive, this is a little more complicated and is definitely more expensive. However, when you consider the flexibility of this strategy, the deferred sales trust, it's definitely a viable option to understand and consider when you're doing 1031 exchange. So let's explain how this works. You guys, your network, you work with doing personal financing, right? Carryback notes, seller carryback notes. That's part of your
seller financing, right?
Seller financing.
Right.
Okay, so you're very familiar with the idea of an installment note, and the way the IRS code reads, if I sell an asset and I sell it on an installment, then I don't have to recognize the taxable gain until I receive the payments. Right. So so let's just say we did an installment over 10 years, right? I have my $1 million property, and just to keep it simple, I get $100,000 a year. I'm only going to have to recognize the gains on that $100,000 once a year over 10 years, and then pay the taxes at that point in time. So that's how an installment sale works, right? Now, the problem, and by the way, that'd be great. I could sell my property. My highly appreciated $1 million property, I put it on an installment sale. Let's say I did it for 30 years, the 30-year note, and now I'm receiving payments, and I've deferred those taxes out in the future. That's great, but the problem is twofold. Now I've traded the position of being a landlord, where I had the control over the property, right? I could raise the rents, lower the rents, put people in, do what I wanted to now where I'm a lender. And as a lender, I have to hope, of course, that my borrower will repay the loan. That's the first problem, right? The second problem is I have to wait for my money, right? So if some other good opportunity comes along, I won't have the cash to do it. I'm just going to be getting these installment payments. Does that make sense?
Yep.
All right.
Understood.
All right. So now what we're going to do is we're going to combine the idea of an installment sale with a trust. Okay, and this will help us satisfy this the idea of using a qualified intermediary and avoiding constructive receipts. So here's how it works. Lance, you have a property for $1 million you want to sell. Okay, now you don't have a buyer yet, but you don't really want to do a 1031 exchange. You want to be able to sit on the sidelines, wait for the next real estate market correction, and then buy the property. That's your goal. Okay, so we create a trust, and the trust is not owned by you. You're not a trustee of the trust. You're not a beneficiary of the trust. It's a third-party trust. We have a trustee that owns and operates this thing, and you start the trust by selling it an option. Okay, and the trust is going to buy an option from you to acquire this property, and the price of the option is going to be pegged to the selling price of that property. Okay, so let's walk through this again. First, we create a trust. Second one, we have an option, so that the trust has the option to acquire your property, and the property, the option price is going to be equal to the actual sale price if the property sells. You with me so far?
Okay. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So now you go out and you market.
Wait, let me clarify. Let me clarify one thing you just said. So the option that's being held by the trust.
Yes.
The option price is going to be the same as the sales price. Is that what you said?
That's correct. Yep, that's correct. Right.
Okay.
Because the trustee of the trust doesn't know what the sales price is going to be until it happens, right? So we just have a contract that's open-ended, and this is typical with options. Options are basically the opportunity to do or not to do something in the future. That's all it is, simply put. Whether it's a option for stocks or an option to buy real estate, or in this case, an option to buy that property and put it into the trust, right? So now we go out and market the property just like normal. Somebody's going to buy the property, and we negotiate the price. It's $1 million, and now this is what happens. The buyer of the property doesn't buy the property from you. The buyer of the property buys the property from the trust. The trustee of the trust exercises the option to acquire the property per the option agreement for the exact price that the buyer is going to buy it. And you, in exchange for that option, are provided with a promissory note equal to, and again, just to keep it simple, the selling price of that property, that $1 million. Okay. Now that was a whole lot of things going on at once, so let's kind of walk you through this. I got a buyer who's going to buy this property. Not going to buy it from you. He's going to buy it from the trust. So the trust is going to exercise its option to acquire the property from you in exchange for a promissory note equal to the value of the sales price. In this case, $1 million. So what the trust has is a property they've acquired for $1 million. They sell it for $1 million. What's their taxable gain? Zero.
Zero. Yeah.
Yeah. So the trust acquired the property, sold the property, doesn't owe a penny in taxes because there was no gain on it, right? Now, there's $1 million of cash sitting inside that trust, right? And because it's inside the trust, you as the prior owner of the property don't have constructive receipt of that money. So you don't have a tax on that property either at this juncture. Make sense?
But I am holding a note. Imagine a note on demand for the $1 million whenever that time's going to come.
That's correct. That's correct. You have a note equal to the cash value of that trust, that $1 million, right? So basically, the trust is what's called feckless. It's worthless because it has $1 million of assets with $1 million liability, in our example, of a note that you own, securing 100% of the assets in the trust. Okay. Now think what
This
we've
is
done.
brilliant. Yep.
Isn't it brilliant? So what we've done here
Yeah.
is we've taken away the biggest problems with an installment sale. The biggest problem being I don't want to be a lender, right? I don't want to depend on this buyer paying me, and I certainly don't want to wait 30 years for my money, but I don't want to pay the taxes, right? So now I've taken away that problem because the cash is there. The trustee of the trust can't do anything with that cash per se because I have a lien against it, so my money's protected, and I've avoided the tax.
Yeah. Yeah. So in effect, if I carry this forward, so now you go out shopping, you're going to take your time, go find your property that you want to buy, and when you're ready to buy, then you, I guess at that point you cash in your note and you 1031 that into. Now, talk about that process. I'm going to cash in the note. Now, how do I avoid paying the taxes at that point, Randy?
Yeah. So there's a couple ways to do it. One is what you just described, which is basically I cash in the note, and you're right. If I did that, now I would have to pay those long-term capital gain tax. So I don't really want to do that. Right, I wanted to delay it. So the first delay is I want to delay it until I find the right property, and because it's in the trust, I can do that for literally decades if I wanted to. The money's sitting inside the trust, and the trust has to pay you interest, and there's some just interesting nuance on that. As the holder of the note, you want to keep your taxes low, so you may want to have the interest be zero. Well, you can't do that. There's a rate that the IRS makes you charge, but you could make it pretty low. You could make it like 2 or 3%, and keep your taxes low, or you could make it higher. Whatever you want to charge. It's your note, right? And you negotiated that with the trustee of the trust. But as those monies come out of the trust to pay the interest on the note, that's going to be recognized as income to you. And that's okay. It's interest, right, on your note.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but
Okay.
now
All right.
we want to acquire this property. Okay, so your prediction comes true, and there's a COVID crash, and real estate values, in certain markets plummet by 20%, and now you want to swoop up and buy some of these bargain apartments. Okay, so if we go back to the 1031 exchange, remember I talked about Boot and how you had to move the mortgage debt and the equity. The other thing that moves along in the 1031 exchange is the depreciation, the basis, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so let's say I had a property that I owned for 30 years, I would have depreciated it down to nothing, right? And meaning we would have used up all the depreciation available on the property, right? Because the time had gone by. And so when you 1031 exchange into the new property, that depreciated basis goes along with it, in this case, nothing. And we love depreciation, right? Because it's a write-off that doesn't cost us any money. It's one of the best things about owning real estate. Okay? So
Right.
now watch how this deferred sales trust fixes that problem. So the deferred sales trust has what in it? Cash. Okay, so now we go out and we find this property, and let's just say that it's again $1 million property that it's going to buy, and we don't want to pay cash for it. We want to get financing on it, right? So we're going to have, say, a 30% down payment, $300,000 that we're going to need to acquire this new property. Guess who's going to be your financial partner in purchasing that $1 million property with the trust?
Let me guess. Yeah, your friend, the trustee of your trust.
The trustee of your trust. You're going to say, trustee, I have this property I'd like to buy. I'd like you to make the down payment as my partner in this new property. I'll qualify for the loan. The property basically does that anyway, but we'll get this loan on the property. You'll be the down payment, and what happens is now I have a brand new property with brand new basis that I get to depreciate. My trust partner becomes my partner as the down payment, and my reimbursement to the trust is basically equal to the interest that I want them to pay me on my note against the trust.
All right, hold that part. That's now. That's okay. So they've put up the down payment. They're your partner.
Yep.
On this, let's just stick with the apartment. On this apartment building, they're your partner.
Yep.
And okay, so now go again. What's the relationship between the two partners there?
Yeah,
define the relationship.
We have a relationship, and I have one partner that's basically the partner that's qualifying for the loan, our $700,000 loan. I have the other partner who's making the down payment, right? So I have to compensate my partner who's making the down payment, and I'm going to compensate him using equal to the amount of interest that I want that trustee to pay me for that $300,000 that he uses as a down payment. So let's just say it was a 3% note that I had against the trust, and I got $300,000. So basically, I'm going to have that property pay my trustee $9,000 a year. So the trustee has the $9,000 a year to pay me anyway.
So it's like private money at 3%.
Mm-hmm.
In this example.
Yeah.
In this example.
That's exactly what it's like. So we solve the problem of delaying the exchange to whenever we want it to be executed, and we've also created the opportunity to acquire a new property and start a new depreciation schedule with the newly acquired property.
So you bought $1 million property. In this example, it was $300,000 down, $700,000 finance. Your basis for your depreciation just reset at $1 million less the land value, but your basis just reset on depreciation. That's good news.
That's good news.
You're paying this low interest rate for this private money access. So now, your property goes up in value to $1.5 million.
Yep.
And you repeat the process. So you do the same thing all over again. And now, at what point? That's your $300,000 really sitting in there as the down payment. What happens to that on the next transaction?
Yeah, technically, remember, it's not your $300,000. It belongs to the trust, right? Your owner. You have no ownership of the trust. You only have a lien against the trust's assets in the form of a note. Okay, so technically that $300,000 belongs to the trustee, and that's fine. All you want to do is suck out the cash that the trust is generating through its $1 million, and in this case, we also want them to be a partner in your property. That's how it works. Yeah,
that's true. I didn't intend to take. I didn't intend to take the $300,000 anyway. I intended to roll it to another property. So the fact that I'm not touching it, that was my intent. I never wanted to touch it.
You never want to touch it because when you touch it, then you get to pay taxes on it. So you wanted to push out that, what we call a deferred sales trust. We're pushing out the taxes on that capital gain out into the future. And you can do this, by the way, for not only decades, you could do it for multi-generations. You could not receive that capital gain for 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 years if that's what you chose to do.
Yeah, because you're holding basically the lien. The lien can transfer to anyone, I imagine, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's what your estate now owns is a note, and the note is the lien against the trust's assets, and that's what you would pass down to your heirs.
Oh man, that's beautiful. That is so powerful. That is so powerful.
Yeah. Should I make it even more?
High, buy low.
I'm going to make it even more powerful. Remember how in the beginning of this conversation I said that with the recent tax laws they changed the 1031 exchange so it's only for real estate? Well, with the deferred sales trust, you don't have that restriction. I can sell anything. I can have my business, that's worth $5 million, and sell it, and I can use it to buy anything. So I could take my highly appreciated business, my highly appreciated artwork, my highly appreciated cryptocurrency, put it in a deferred sales trust, sell it, not pay the taxes on it, and then use that money to do something else in the future. How about that?
So, wow. So basically, the main takeaway I've got is, first of all, you sell high and then buy low whenever you feel like it and then pay no tax.
Yeah. You're controlling when you're going to pay the tax.
Pass it on to anybody.
Yeah. And for any type of asset. So you're not restricted by asset. You're not restricted by time. The restrictions are really this trust relationship. And like all things, there's always details that matter, and frankly, the only downside of this deferred sales trust arrangement is that it's not cheap, right? So we're a 1031 exchange might cost you a few $100s. A deferred sales trust might cost you, $10,000 or $20,000 to set up and thousands of dollars to operate a year.
So you gotta have the the math has got to be right. But then really, I mean, this is real estate. It doesn't take a lot of real estate to make it justify it. I mean, it's that's the beauty of real estate. We're talking about bigger numbers anyway.
That's right.
All right. Well, everybody's head is swimming right now, Randy, because you just planted all these opportunities
Boom.
in their mind. Boom. Yeah. You can imagine this right now, and it also reinforces, it double reinforces what I tell everybody is, listen, get out and buy yourself some real estate. There's all these, tax advantage is one of the biggest areas, and Randy just gave us a PhD with regards to 1031s, deferred sales trust, and take Uncle Sam out of, the trust can be your partner, but you don't want Uncle Sam being your partner,
right.
taking their stake every
That's
time
right.
you move the property.
Right.
Well, this is great. Any final comments on this, Randy, before we wrap up this session?
Yeah, I want to give you one more strategy. Is that okay?
Yeah.
This is the easier one to understand. Yeah, I know. Boom, right? The easier one.
Go easy on us.
The point of all this really, Lance, and this is really the point of having this podcast, is there's so many good ideas and strategies out there that people just aren't aware of. And that's why we're doing this. We want to get the word out so that people understand that there are alternatives to just paying taxes or just going down the mainstream, right? And so with that being said, I want to introduce another idea. It's called a Delaware Statutory Trust. It's also, by the way, Deferred Sales Trust, DST, Delaware Statutory Trust, DST. Be careful, podcast listeners, if you're Googling this stuff and you type in the DST, there's a lot of let's call them copycat strategies, and I've done the due diligence on these. I am very comfortable in working with the attorneys that put these trusts together, because this is not something you're going to cook up in your legal Zoom, right? Ain't going to happen that way. Before you explain, which means they need to come see you, Randy. If they're getting to this point, they need to come see you to get guidance in this process. They got to have somebody that knows the ropes here. You just don't. It's right. It's not a legal Zoom application. It's not a legal Zoom, right? And where there are thousands and thousands of qualified intermediaries around the country to work with. There's very few law firms that know how to draft these trusts and make sure that the funds transfer properly, so that again you avoid the taxation issues. So yeah, this is not to be taken lightly when you go this route. So let me talk about this last one, and we can wrap up the Delaware Statutory Trust. The Delaware Statutory Trust is a little bit different in that the property is in this case is going to already be owned by somebody. It's going to be owned by possibly a brokerage or an insurance company or something like that, but they acquire the property with the purpose of allowing people to 1031 exchange directly into it. Okay, so basically, I own a huge commercial building, $100 million property, and as the owner-operator of that property, I want to sell a portion of it, and I'm going to allow people to 1031 exchange into it, and it's called a Delaware Statutory Trust. Now, the benefit of this is it is a 1031 exchange, so it's simple and inexpensive, right, to do it. You do still retain the step up in basis at death, which is again, you lose that with that deferred sales trust portion of it. The downside about it is that you're part of a syndication, you're part of this owner operator thing, and you can't get out of it until they let you out of it.
I see.
Right. Now, that doesn't make them bad. They pay great returns. It's just basically, look, I'm done. This is ideal for somebody that's owned property for years and years. They've done their roll up. They're tired of fixing toilets, and so now they just want to get a check every month. You do a Delaware Statutory Trust 1031 exchange. You're going to get a check at a good rate of return. You're going to get a step up in basis when you pass. It's an ideal situation for something like that. Another alternative.
So let's make sure it's clear for everybody, including myself.
Mm-hmm.
So you're selling your property, or you're selling your property into the trust?
You're selling your property to a third party, just like always, and you're doing a 1031 exchange just like we talked about in the beginning. But instead of going out and looking for an individual properties and up, like you're just buying into this, massive property, Delaware Statutory Trust.
I got it. You're a partner in this conglomeration of other people that are doing the same thing. It's a
Right.
pool of people that are doing this, and now you're totally a passive participant. You get a passive income check.
You get a passive income check.
And
Yeah. As opposed to doing a syndication, which we can talk about another day, or a limited partnership thing. This is just really simple. 1031 exchange, and you get your check, you get your equity, and you just roll with the plan. And typically, the Delaware Statutory Trust will last about 5, maybe 10 years at the most, and then they're going to sell. They're going to cash you out. So you'll need to get into another DST if you want to keep doing it.
Wow, I got a bunch of ways to go there, but we've run out of time on this episode. We're
I know.
gonna
Sorry.
You got to come. Everybody's got to come back. No, this has been great. This has been great because you've laid so many cool ideas that hit my head right now. But so right now for this podcast, we got 1031 exchange, which is basically inexpensive, simple, done a million times, or the deferred sales trust, which is going to cost some money, but it gives you absolutely more flexibility. There's no time bound to it. It resets and the depreciation basis gets reset. And then the final one is the Delaware Statutory Trust. It sounds like it's also a simple way to do it.
Very simple.
Very simple, and you get a passive return. Don't pay taxes. You're not receiving any cash. So, all right, Randy. Listen. So I'm telling anybody who wants to be, we're thinking about doing any of this. You need to get a hold of this man right here, Randy Lupke. So, Randy, how do they plug into your world? Let everybody know how to get access to you and your world.
Yep. The easiest, best way to plug into my world is to go to my website, which is lifetimeparadigm.com. And that's a little hard to spell. The lifetime's easy, LAFETIME, but paradigm is PARADIGM.com, lifetimeparadigm.com. When you go there, you're going to find a lot of great information, articles, blogs. You're going to find podcasts like the one we're doing here, recorded podcasts and interviews will be there. And the one thing I would encourage all of our listeners to do when you get there is to roll in our Financial Independence Toolkit. The toolkit is 100% free. You get financial guides, you get training videos, you get spreadsheets, and you also get a 20-minute no-cost meeting one-on-one with one of our independent fiduciary advisors. So all for free, just by enrolling in the Financial Independence Toolkit at our website, lifetimeparadigm.com.
All right, excellent. And if you want to get plugged in to my world of apartments, small apartments, I'll send you my book for free, freeapartmentsbook.com, freeapartmentsbook.com. The book's free. Send you some other educational materials. Just pay $6 shipping and handling, freeapartmentsbook.com. And to get the show notes and listen to these archives for our podcast, go to fibetter.com, fibetter.com. We have show notes. All the resources we're giving you access here, they have links there as well, plus all the other cool stuff, and all these archives on these topics of real estate and financial independence. Randy, this has been fantastic. Great job. Thank you for another great session. Boy, I love doing these with you.
Awesome, Lance. Wonderful. Oh, one last thing, listeners. When you go to your iTunes or wherever it is you're going to Spotify, you're going to get your podcast from. Give us a rating. Give us a 5-star rating. We'd appreciate that. It helps make other people aware of these things, and circulate that. So the ratings are appreciated, right? So yeah, Lance.
Very much so.
Very good. Fun.
All right. Till next time.
All right. Bye.